The play on the field, the court, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and vendors who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go Behind the Game with Patrick Klinger and Dave Bowden.
Welcome to Behind the Game, presented by KLN Family Brands, a great Minnesota company making great products for people and pets like Wiley Wallaby Licorice, Sweet Chaos Popcorn, and Nutrisource Pet Foods. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners. Alongside me today, a guest host, second time on Behind the Game, Jeff
Second
Wright.
time, yeah.
Welcome back. Great
Thank
to
you
see
so
my
much.
friend.
Great to see you as well.
Yeah, fantastic. We've got a terrific guest today, a guest that's a friend, longtime friend of both of ours.
That's right. Joining us today, our dear friend, Pat Harris, a guy that spent his life rooted in St. Paul, a Cretan grad, but we won't hold that against you, right?
Class of 84.
And a lifelong public servant. Pat, you've spent 12 years on the St. Paul City Council, time with both the St. Paul Regional Water Services and the Metropolitan Airports Commission, long line of volunteer work with nonprofits like Serving Our Troops and Catholic Charities, your respected voice in the financial services, a dedicated husband, and a proud father to 4 beautiful children. And now he's a newly published author of the powerful novel, A Season on the Drink. So welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having us. What an honor to be here with 2 great Americans, a great St. Paulite and an honorary. Oh, you're a St. Paulite too, Patrick.
I am.
2 great
15
St. Paulites.
years now.
That's right. So
We consider him one of our own now, I guess.
Takes a while.
Takes a while. You're in.
So great to have you here. We're going to jump into the book in a second here, but I mentioned your long history of life in public service, not only on the city council, but doing a lot of nonprofit work, regional commission roles. As you think back on this, what first pulled you towards a life of public service?
You know, I think it goes way back to when, and I appreciate that question, since I was a kid. I just believed in taking a role in the community and having some influence and making people's lives better. I did the MD Carnival, I think, when I was in 4th grade, and the blood drives when I was a little kid and all these things, you organized. And, and then it just kind of kept going. And we've had a lot of fun doing all the things that we've done, and we've brought a lot of people on board. You're part of it all, and Patrick, both you two are part of a lot of the things that we do together. And so I think being an active in your community, and being able to make sure that everybody has what you had, which is how Serving Our Troops started, and kind of what this book is about is, how we can make people enjoy what we enjoy and have the healthy lifestyle and the healthy community that we all can enjoy. So we've had a lot of fun, and we'll keep doing it.
Hey, congratulations on the new book. I have great admiration for anyone who can write a book. I struggle to write an email sometimes. So, it's fantastic. For viewers who haven't read it yet or aren't familiar with it, can you give us a quick overview of A Season on the Drink?
Yeah, thank you. It's an exceptional story in that it is true, and it likely has never happened before. And it is a story about a group of chronic alcoholics that lived in a home for chronic alcoholics run by Catholic Charities called the St. Anthony Residence. And I was a Vista volunteer at Catholic Charities in the late 80s, and then ended up working at Catholic Charities for a longer time. And I heard the story of these residents of this home for people that have had extreme difficulty and poverty and with alcoholism. And basically the county has said, you can live here. You can get $50 a month. You can drink here, but not drink on site. And I heard this exceptional story that they formed a softball team, that a couple of guys were playing pickup softball in St. Paul, and they formalized it, formed a team. It got wind in Catholic Charities management, and they set them up in games against corporate teams. And I'm not going to give everything away, but I think it's pretty obvious what happened, because it's a story of what they all did that summer and who they beat on that diamond. People that society has said, hey, you know what, you live in this facility instead of being on the streets anymore. You've been to treatment 50 times and detox maybe 150 times. And so St. Anthony is now your home. But that one summer really showed what I believed and why we're all involved in the community is that we're all the same at the end of the day. And our circumstances take us to different places. But in 1986, a year before the Twins won the World Series, and there's a lot of that in there, these guys got out on the diamond in St. Anthony Park and St. Paul, Langford Park, and pretty much smoked everybody that they played. And there were corporate teams, construction companies and finance banks and things like that. And so I wrote a chronicle of that summer, which has a lot of the St. Anthony residents in it and what it is and who lived there. There's a main character that is, his name is Real, who I knew very well because he was a client of mine in job services. And he became someone that I worked with for 3 years. And I heard everything about the team and what they accomplished. And so it's a long answer, I'm sorry, but it's, this is really about hope and perception and that everybody has a soul and everybody has humanity, some recovery in there, some sports, I have to tell you that I can't imagine that this has happened before. And will it happen again? I don't know.
So you mentioned it that the novel is based on a true story here, almost 40 years ago now.
Yeah.
How closely did you stick to the real events that took place throughout that summer?
I'd say the book is 85% straight up true. I interviewed as many people as I could. I was around for part of it. Hard to track down people that have passed away due to alcoholism, and so it's a pretty true story, I would say. And we call it a novel, because some of the game action I think is I had to put some of that in there, but I know who they played and I know what happened and I know who the players were, and every character in this thing, except maybe one amalgamation of a couple of characters, is 100% true. And so,
Pat, this took place in 1986.
Yes.
Is St. Anthony residence does it still exist today? Are they still playing softball today?
It definitely exists today. Catholic Charities, which I'm still a part of, serving on their board now for the second time. The facility exists in the Midway area of St. Paul, north of University Avenue, kind of in an industrial area. It's a block from the one that I talk about in the book, the new facility, which I worked very hard to build that new facility when I was on the city council. It was a great project that Pat Ryan and Tim Marks and the city of St. Paul, Randy Kelly, everybody was really a part of it. Chris Coleman, we were all a part of it. But it's still there operating, by the same amount of gentlemen that are living there. They get a little more money monthly than they used to. It's like 90 now, and it's still a difficult place, but it is a place that Catholic Charities believed many years ago that everybody deserves a roof over their head and 3 squares a day, and that's what you get there. And some people come out of it. My client Marty, he came out of it, and got him through job services in the 80s, and he's since passed away. But it is operating. There's a handful of them in the nation. I believe the first one was in Boston. Nobody wants to say that they were the first, but we think Boston was the first and we were the second. So,
when you first open the book, you dedicate this to your parents with a line that really caught my attention. It says, "You taught us to honor every story and to speak for those who can't." And to me, it's such a powerful way to open. And as I think of you, like when I hear that, it makes me think of you, puts a smile on my face. And how has that kind of belief shaped your life today and maybe inspired you to write this story?
I appreciate that, Joe. I get emotional when I talk about that part of it, because that's just what my grandparents and my parents all taught us, that we all have a story to share, that we all matter. And I live my life that way. And one of the reasons I wrote this book was this really is a story of that, that we all matter and that everybody has a place in this world. And I hope people can pull that out of the book. Yeah, they'll pull out some sports, they'll pull out some recovery, they're going to pull out a little bit of history, a little bit of this and that, but I want them to pull out the inspiration of everybody mattering, and that's what my parents taught us. I mean, we had strangers at our house on Thanksgiving all the time, and that's just the way we lived. And my grandparents came over to this country from Armenia, and they just believed that, they were just thankful to be here and treated everybody with respect. And I know that's how you two live. I know that, and that's how I've tried to live, and I tried to tell that in this story. I hope it inspires people.
I don't want to give too much away, but this was a softball team that was comprised of chronic alcoholics, right? And they were beating teams, guys who, a lot of corporate teams. Did they play drunk? I mean, if they're chronic alcoholics, it would stand to reason that they were probably tipping a few back before the game, maybe even during the games. I mean, how did they compete if...
Many of them were playing intoxicated, and heavily intoxicated. And the thing I talk about in the book too is that when the money runs out in certain situations, you're switching to different types of chemicals mixed with Gatorade and Kool-Aid and things, and becomes very difficult. And many of them were intoxicated. A couple of them, Marty, did not. He was sober during that season, and he played baseball for the University of Minnesota. And so he was on Herb Brooks's team when Herb played at the U of M, and Herb went on to the hockey team, and Marty went on to leave the program and have problems with alcoholism, But as frail as he was, and as amazing as he was, what a person of character, and a poet, and his actual poetry is in the book, he could still swing the bat. He could really rip it, and he did. And every single one on the team except one guy smoked, so there's smoke everywhere. So you've got other teams with eye paint and great uniforms and what have you. And the St. Anthony team had T-shirts that were provided to them by a great Catholic Charities donor and hats, but jeans and torn up shoes and cigarettes, and lots of cigarettes. And they were able to gel. And I think they just kind of surprised people. And in the beginnings of these games, they would get angry. The other team would get angry, like, I'm losing to these people. And this guy's got a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. And, he might smell of alcohol. And it would anger them. But then they realized what was happening. And I think a respect emerged off the diamond between the teams as well, that I think was a story that needed to be told. And so Marty could play ball. There's no question about that.
So in the book, you mention a stat that the average alcoholic goes through treatment 7 times and detox 25 times. And as you think about the characters in this book, what do you hope the reader takes away around addiction, recovery, and dignity?
Well, dignity is the word, Jeff. I mean, it really is. It is that there was people in that facility that didn't play on the softball team that had been to treatment more than 100 times. And Ramsey County will say, you're going to stay here, or the streets, And but everybody deserves dignity, I hope this book really shows that maybe it was sports, behind the game. Maybe it was sports that had to show everybody that we all deserve that dignity. And so no matter how many times some of these guys went to treatment, and a couple of those guys on the team had very major difficulties. Like I said in the beginning, that they're no different than you and I, So dignity is the catchword right there, I think.
You mentioned Marty Peterson a couple of times. He's the one person on the team, we're in the book, where you used his real name.
Correct.
And he's really the heart and soul of the team. He was a star athlete at St. Paul's Wilson High School. He played baseball for the Gophers, as you mentioned. But in 1986, he had lost his family and his job at the Postal Service because of alcoholism. Can you tell us a little bit more about his story and his journey that led him to St. Anthony residence and then eventually getting out of it?
Well, and so his family has been phenomenal as I wrote this book. Emotional meetings, and been really supportive of the book and what we've done, and provided all the poetry as well. And there's it's like volumes of it, and it's really amazing. And Marty was a very learned guy. He read all the time. He worked at the thrift store at the Union Gospel Mission, was the job that we set him up with, and he collected first edition books that he donated to the University of Minnesota. He was just a person that had a lot of emotion in him, and alcoholism took him at a path of difficulty that he ended up losing his job and becoming estranged with his family. And his son has just been really exceptional and went through a lot in his life and has been as supportive as possible to his father and to this story. And so I really believe that the grips of addiction grabbed Marty, and then something at some point in his life, when he left the St. Anthony residence and went to a program at the Union Gospel Mission, that he kind of turned himself around and realized that being sober was a better thing for him.
Yeah. And was he able to reconcile with his family later on?
In pieces, yes. Yes, he did with his son. His son's at peace with it all. And Marty died some years ago. And so a lot of stuff happened towards the end there. I think they're doing okay. The son is really a remarkable guy, who's the one I work with mostly on this thing.
So one of the things that runs through this book is just the quiet strength that is taken to keep going when life knocks you down. You've faced your own share of adversity, right?
Yeah.
Including your son's battle with cancer. How did maybe your experiences that you went through shape your understanding of resilience, and even reflecting back on this story for almost the past 40 years, even as you think about how you wrote the story?
Another catchword, Jeff, would be resilience. We went through the cancer with Joey, and who's doing great, as you know. And I think it's just, finding something in yourself to be able to meet the challenge that's in front of you, which I think a lot of these guys tried to do, to really, find it in themselves to try to get out of the St. Anthony residence, to try to, reconcile with their families. And the sports thing, that one summer in '86 kind of really guided a few people to perhaps get out of that facility, and it really mattered. And resilience, absolutely, on writing the book. As you mentioned, I'm in the financial industry, and AFL-CIO, I'm with these days, the Housing Trust, and you start writing a book 30 years ago, and I just, the story just drove me. I absolutely had to tell this story to Patrick and Jeff and everybody across this country. And as I said before, the book is all over the country right now, and I had to pull it out of me, to be able to figure out how to do that. I had a lot of great help. Resilience is also part of being able to accept the fact that you need help from others. You can't do it on your own. And I had a community of people that were telling me that, this is no good and you got to change this. And I did a lot of that. And with some people that, were looking for help on their own as well. And so resilience was everything on it. And I finally, after 30 years, got it done.
You talk about that, right? I think it's a beautiful part of St. Paul is we need others. They always say it takes a village. If you're in St. Paul, you're from St. Paul, you realize you got a pretty good village around you.
Yeah, there's no question about that. You talk about community, and the community that I've loved since day one is that the great thing about St. Paul is that we are here for each other, and that that you can call on anybody at any time to do anything for you. Obviously within reason, but it is, and I called on a lot of people on this book. I've called on a lot of people to help at Catholic Charities to build that new facility, and they call on me to do things, and we call on each other, and that's the strength of St. Paul, I believe.
Yeah, no question about it. Clearly, telling this story has had a significant personal impact on you. Did the story change how you see sports, community, redemption?
It's definitely redemption in sports. Definitely sports. You know, the power of sports. I saw, you know, when my dad was in a nursing home, and every TV's got the Vikings game on, and every TV's got the Twins game on, and what sports, how it can matter to people as you build community. You know, it's not just about being a rabid fan, which the three of us are. We know that, but it's about how it brings people together. And in this particular book, I mean, like no other story that I've ever heard, sports brought a group of people together, brought other people into it. The neighborhood started initially in the beginning of the story. It's like, you know, what's going on here? These guys smoking, and I don't know if this is safe for my kids. They started lining up to watch the games towards the end of things. You know, the police were down there as fans, you know what I mean? Little league teams that were initially like apprehensive about this team that they're gonna take over the field from, you know, to start their practice. They're making all nervous, but towards the end, they were watching the games and being fans. So sports is community. You know, we can talk about stadiums all day long and things like that, but at the end of the day, this brings us together, you know, whether it's in your backyard, you know, or where we go, you know, what do we do? It is community, and I really, really believe that. You know.
Good. Give us a little peek behind the curtain, right? I think a lot of people set out in life and say, hey, I want to write a book. You've known about this story for a long time. How long did the process take in writing this story? And if you look back on it or reflect on it, what do you believe was the hardest part about getting this novel completed?
You know, it has been a long process. You know, you start something years ago, and then you get married, you have kids, you run for office, you know, you serve steaks to soldiers. You know, you got all these things that are going on, and you can't do it in pieces. You know, and I was doing it in pieces, and the hardest part was saying, okay, I'm gonna wrap this up, and that was about 6 years ago or so, where I, you know, kids are little. You know, it's like, I mean, we've all had kids, and you realize that if you can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you own the house for like 3 hours. You know, so I did a lot of early morning writing, and I just decided like every day I was gonna get up that early and get after some piece of this story. And then all of a sudden you see an end coming, and you do it, and then I shared the manuscript with some friends, and they're like, well, you know, you got to do some work on this thing, you know. And I did, and I just kept doing it and doing it because Marty was driving me. These people were driving me to tell their story. There is no other story like this, and it can inspire people. It's completely changed my life. I think it can change other people's lives.
You know, not only is it a fascinating story that you're sharing, but you're using proceeds from the book to help a number of causes. So talk to us a little bit about that and some of the causes that it supports.
Yeah, you know, thanks for bringing that up, because we're excited about that, and you know, we're supporting Catholic Charities in this process. You know, they're on the front lines of a lot of services to people in deep poverty in the Twin Cities. That's a Twin Cities thing, and so a lot of the proceeds are going to that, and the Friends of the Library, obviously, to promote people and literacy. So a little bit kind of all around the map. The book's at the airport right now, and we're going to donate some to the Airport Foundation, you know, which helps travelers and things in need. And so we're going down the line on that one. But I've been real clear, and my wife Laura has been amazing at being an extraordinary partner in this thing, is that all we want is to tell the story, you know, and I'm driven to tell the story. Anything after that, we're donating things back to a lot of different causes.
That's fantastic.
Fantastic. All you have to do is open up the book, and you see some incredible endorsements, one of those being St. Paul's very own and Hall of Famer Dave Winfield. Getting endorsements like that, what has that meant to you on this journey?
It's humbling. And you know, important to me personally. Dave Winfield support early on. You read an early manuscript and really, because he's an amazing individual. We all know that. He's unbelievable in a lot of ways for our community. For it to matter to him really made a difference for me. Mike Veck, who's one of our great citizens, just an amazing human being, who roots for the underdog since day one, and is in a Netflix documentary about, the saying of second chances, which is amazing if you haven't seen it. His support it's just humbling, and my college roommate who wrote a bunch of books about Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan and things, and Dave Whitaker, he's supporting it. So, Jack Hanahan, it's just been really humbling to have people that see what I'm seeing in this thing and what I hope everybody else is going to see. But, Dave Winfield is just, he is, a St. Paulite at core and a towering figure that really makes difference, And so I'm honored by all those.
Yeah. I'm curious if you've heard from anyone connected to St. Anthony residents, maybe the administrators or some of the residents. Are they familiar with the book?
Yeah, I did a reading that we donated money for that I invited Catholic Charities staff and board members to, and I've been open about making sure they all understand the story of what's happening here, and they see the St. Anthony residents, generally speaking, it is tucked away in a neighborhood, and it was done by design, and I want people to know about it. I want people to know who's there, and our team at Catholic Charities has been amazing. Jamie Verbrugge is the CEO, and he's been extremely supportive, and John Estrom's part of it, and Tim Mark's been part of it, and it's been. I really reached out to a lot of people. It is a community thing for sure.
As we kind of wrap this up, if somebody's reading this, what would you say? What's the one thing you want people to leave with from this book?
I think it goes back to my parents in that statement of, I want them to know that everybody matters. You can't put someone, tuck them away, out of sight, out of mind. The people at that residence and other people who are in various difficulties in their life, whether it's alcoholism or loneliness or whatever it is, that people matter. And maybe it took a game of softball for people to realize that we are all created equal. But I want people to be inspired by the fact that anything is possible, and that on the diamond and in life, and we are all the same in the end.
The story makes a great plot for a movie. Is that possibility somewhere down the road?
That'd be great. We're getting a little bit of vibe on that, and so I hope to do that, because spreading it out is exactly what I want, is for as many people to hear about it as possible, which is why I'm also quite grateful to be here today.
Fantastic. Wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that with all of us here today. Incredibly powerful, and dignity is the word that really stands with me. For those that are interested in picking up a copy of the book, where can they find it?
It's in a lot of bookstores in the Twin Cities and across the state and country. Amazon, of course, is a place, and that they can get it online. And so, it's on most websites for bookstores that have it, and they can just get it online or go to your local independent bookseller and pick one up.
Fantastic. Pat Harris, author of A Season on the Drink. It's a great story. I highly, highly encourage you to pick up the book. It's fantastic. It's inspiring. It's certainly inspiring me. Thank you so much for being on Behind the Game. Appreciate it. Great to see you as always. Jeff, fantastic job. Thank all of you for watching Behind the Game, presented by KLN Family Brands. We'll see you again next month.